Welcome to the Marketing Mortgages Social for Brokers podcast. Now, today I have with me someone who is regarded as a celebrity in the mortgage and specialist finance world. Someone who I've seen countless times on LinkedIn on the photos where he's normally manning a stand for the loan partnership. Of course, if you're watching YouTube, you'll know I'm talking about John Webb. Now, not many know this, but John actually started off working life as a primary school teacher and a corporate entertainer back in 1975. So today we're going to chat about his entire journey from being an employed teacher to taking that leap to going self-employed and all the way up to being a leader at the loan partnership. So John, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chris. Good to meet you. And I'm looking forward to going through my story with you. It's quite a ride.
I can imagine. And some of the things that I have read from John kindly gave me some notes before the podcast about a presentation that he'd done recently. And some of the figures, the stats and the journey, part of the journey is incredible. So actually, briefly, before we jumped on this podcast, I gave John a bit of an insight into the introduction, and I called him a celebrity in this world. And John was like, I'm not a celebrity, but I think everybody listening to this, if they know, if you said John Webb, you could automatically picture him in front of a loan partnership stand somewhere. So he most definitely is a celebrity, and it's an honour to have you on the podcast. I really do appreciate your time.
Flattering, mate.
It lines you up for a good episode now. This
is
it.
We'll see. All right.
So before we get started then, take us back to when you were a primary school teacher. What was your favourite subject that you taught?
I was a primary school teacher, and I did actually PE and geography at college.
Oh, okay.
Went through that, but I went into primary education because I thought the opportunities for a man in primary education were better, because it is really, primary school education is dominated really by women teachers. So I thought, if I go into the primary school education sector, I had more chance of getting up the ladder and being a head teacher or whatever sooner than I anticipated. But Chris, it didn't work out like that.
And why was that? When was the light bulb moment that went off?
I had 3 interviews for a deputy headship, and I knew in the last interview I'd really interviewed well, and I didn't get the job. And I found out, as in life, it wasn't what you know, it's who you know. And somebody that had been in the school for many years, only 4 years from retiring, got the job, and it made me very disillusioned. And at that time, because teaching was such a poor wage, I think I was earning about $1,700 a month as a primary school teacher coming out with. My father, who was a broker, just had a very small brokerage. He said to me, do you want to come in and just sign a few clients up and learn the business in an evening to make my wage up, right? So I went out in an evening seeing clients before the days of mobile phones and things. And really, it was a question of having an A to Z, an address and a name, telephone boxes, and going round clients and signing them up for loans. And then if you did a £10,000 loan, that was a big one, right? And I could earn basically, for a £10,000 loan then, back in 85, I could earn more or less the same as I was as teaching for a month. The commission on that was £1,000, and that opened my eyes. And I thought, this is a bit better than teaching for a month and earning $1,700. So it did open my eyes, and I got into it. And that's how I learned the business, going out at the hard end, seeing clients in an evening. 1 or 2 memorable stories of where I went out to a client for a £10,000 loan with Cedar Holdings, who were part of Lloyd's Bowmaker, a house in Liverpool, quite a big house. And I get in there, knock on the door, and I sit down to sign the client up. And I said, could you just tell me what the purpose of the loan is for? And the husband said to the wife, turns to her and he said, you tell him, because I'm too embarrassed. I said, what? You're too embarrassed? He said, yeah. He said, just please tell him. And she pointed to the kitchen door, and it was one of those doors like the Wild West split door where the top opened and come back, right? So she goes over to the door, opens the door, and believe it or not, a horse popped its head out of the kitchen. And the husband said, I am sick of her bringing that in an evenings. We've got to build something out in the garden ready for the horse. And that was the purpose of the loan.
Brings the horse into the house.
A horse was in the house. A true story, Chris. And that opened my eyes. Another story, and I look back on these days now, going round, and I went to a house, and I go in the house to sign the clients up, got all the forms and everything, and there was a guy there in a string vest, and he's on the settee, and I'm actually talking to him, and he's clipping his toenails, and his toenails are flying off, and that was my introduction to actually seeing clients at the rough end. It was really different days than we have now, but very enjoyable. Yeah. And I certainly learnt the job on my feet.
So before we fast forward, Wayne, to the future, here's a question for you. Did you prefer the old days, or do you prefer doing the business now?
I think there was a lot of fun in the old days, but I look back now and we are a totally different industry, totally bona fide, regulated. I mean, I look back and Chris, it was a bit like the Wild West. And that's why the second mortgage industry was tarnished with this attitude. And I think one of the things, again, an early introduction into the mortgage brokerage was that I left teaching and my father said to me, right, we've been invited to a corporate hospitality event down in Wales to see Wales play England. Teaching, I'd never been to a corporate hospitality. What's this? Yep. Free trip down, and everything. So I go down to Cardiff and I saw out the corner of my eye at the hotel in the evening with the get together that one guy, Peter Walker from Midland and General, people might remember him, he went up to a guy called Tony Murta, who had an infamous reputation for putting adverts in the paper with sharks coming out and people drowning in debt and really creating this terrible attitude about second charges. And out the corner of my eye, I saw him and he poured a pint of beer over his head. And I thought, welcome to the world of corporate hospitality. Really was a different world, but very fun days. But now totally regulated and I can walk along and see any mortgage broker and I'm on a par with them. I've got the same products, the same legislation, and it is. But Chris, I would be lying if I said it was real heady days, fun days.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine. Yeah, you see, it's almost like the double glazing sales years and years ago. There's a series called White Gold, and it was all about having a bit of fun, and it has changed since then. But it's just interesting to ask that question to see how it compares. So you went from the primary school teacher, 1985, and then into the 90s. You then took over the company, I believe.
Yeah, my father passed away, and again, it's funny how life goes. And I'll get back to one or two of the things at the end of this presentation. Is that he passed away, and my advertising agent then, because that's how we got our leads from advertising in the local press. My advertising agent, his partner went down to see a broker, Tony Sutton from Specialist Finance. A lot of people will know him, Tony. He was my underwriter at Cedar Holdings. I'm giving me age away there a bit, Chris. So, and he went down, Peter Monkhouse, his partner, went down to see Tony. And unfortunately, he was killed on the way back in the Hatfield rail crash. And how many people get killed in a rail crash? I mean, rare. Little. 4 people were killed that day, and Peter was killed. So my agent, he said, look, what should I do? Well, my dad had gone, and we got together. And he had the advertising expertise, and I had the mortgage expertise. So the two together, eventually, we were then Express Finance, and that's where we morphed a bit and came, and in the end formed Dow for a Loan in, I think, 1998. We formed
Oh
that.
wow! So
And
that was because you had a big property slump and a market recovery within that as well. So
yeah,
for brokers, just pulling away from your story, I think this is a really valuable lesson.
yeah.
Over the last 5 years since COVID, we have seen quite a boom in whatever market is, specialist or resi. How do you think people should prepare if there is a slump, or how do you get through the bad times if you are having a bit of a lull like you experienced like 93?
I think no matter how heady or well you're doing, always put things aside, money aside. Don't go thinking this is wonderful. We're having a great time, and always put money aside for that will happen. And these slumps always do happen. We've had them in 93, 2008. We had the COVID period. They always happen. And I would say if you're building a business, just prepare that it's not always going to be like that. Just prepare for that rainy day. And that's what we did. We were always careful, and we tried to just, build the balance up in the bank. Because one of the great things about the second mortgage and the loan industry is that when a loan gets paid out, we get paid out. So the cash flow wise, it's not like where a mortgage, they're waiting ages for the money to come in. The flow is good. So if you keep that, and just your bank balance might be building up, but always put some away for that rainy day. Always be prepared for the worst, because I know from experience it happens, and it's happened 3 times.
And what do you do with staff? So there's a lot of mortgage brokers out there now, business owners that are thinking, right, times are good, I'm going to hire more staff. Are you a bit more hesitant in hiring staff when it's busy? Or when do you know to hire more staff, John?
One of the things I always used to say, I used to love organized chaos, right?
Okay.
And by that, I mean that the secret to a mortgage broker or a second charge broker is you've got to have the leads, right? And I always thought, get the leads in, and we'll bother with the admin and the staffing afterwards. So I would say, get the business coming in, and then deal with the admin and the staffing afterwards. And that the thing is, then if you can recruit well, and one of the reasons why I'm with this Northern Manc voice is that I went down and we started the loan partnership in Hemel Hempstead, because that was a real area where loans.co.uk, not loan.co, loans.co.uk had been down south, and there in 2008 the market crashed, and they had to get rid of 400 staff, and so there was an absolute mass of staff that were trained up, and that's why we started in Hemel, because after 2008 we started in 2013, and we were easily, Andy Pelly, my business partner, he knew lots of staff, and we had trained up staff. And if you can recruit staff that are trained up from day one and up to speed, happy days.
You just slot them in, can't you?
Yeah.
I know we're getting ahead of ourselves there. We're getting into the loan partnership, but no, it's just an interesting one about staff, because that's something that I know a lot of brokers, whether it be second charge or mortgage brokers, do wonder, when do I hire staff? But what John's saying there is get the business in first and then hire the staff. Don't do it the other way around. So 1997, you joined the Corporation of Financial Brokers, and you were doing you're saying the market grew to £500,000 a month revenue.
Yeah.
That was back in
now
1997.
it's only about 150,000 a month now, Chris,
Wow. So it's a huge difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you started going into the corporate entertaining space, so you were kind of going...
It was really heady days, because self-declarations, PPI, commissions were up to 18% rather than 2% now, plus a broker fee. So earning 18% a deal. And one thing I realized when I first went in is the phrase, and it's useful, speculate to accumulate. If you can do that, and not be, and have the confidence in your systems and your ability that you can convert the business, then yes, by all means, speculate. And nowadays it's like paying on online, whatever, the
lead
Google or
generators.
whatever searches and that. If you've got your confidence in your ability to convert that business, then go for it. And we did, and we built up, but really from Express Finance, we changed the name to Dial for a Loan. In 1990, I think 1997, 98, we changed the name. And within 3 weeks, we increased business 35% because of the online. And online was just really starting. And we were getting probably from that 500 inquiries a day, right?
Jeez.
So 500 inquiries a day. That's where we had to, once we got the business coming in, then we got the staff. And within probably, I would say 12, 18 months, we built the staff up to 200 staff. We had a call center and that. And when I look back on it, and I really think, how on earth did we do that? But we had a great team, great people around us. And it was Manchester, we were in Sale, was a bit of a hotbed for recruiting. And if you can recruit easily, as we've said before, and there was lots of other brokers, and obviously people came knowing that we had a great reputation for a happy ship, earning well, and that. So people are attracted to us, and we built up the staffing. And I think I went through it before. With Dial for a Loan, near the end, we were spending on advertising, and this is newspaper, TV, tube, national press. We were spending £2 million a month.
And £2 million a month in 1998. That's insane levels of money. But you were obviously getting the return on investment, weren't you?
Yeah, we had. I mean, our gross probably was 4.5 million a month. And it was because, like, I know we go back, and it's like something I say now, basically, Chris, unlike today where, compliance are all over it. Basically, if you were alive, then you got a loan.
And that was it, self-certifying.
It was that easy, and, I do look back, they were really a world away from the world we're in today, and
wow, that's
all the better for it, really.
Of course, but just insane figures, and that's at the beginning of this episode. That's why I wanted to bring a bit of a highlight to the figures that we're going to be talking about today. In 1998, doing £4.5 million a month in revenue is just huge. Well, so if we fast forward a bit and we go to 2002, you built the business to a point where you then sold.
One thing I'd just like to go back on, and I know it does, before we sold the business, with we did Nick Fulford and I. Then we just before we changed the name to Dial for a Loan, we did have, it was called Express Finance, and we changed the name to Dial for a Loan, and we again knew that other brokers were putting quarter-page adverts in the Sun and the Mirror. And what £7,500 for an advert in the press, right? God. So we thought, let's give it a go. And we put an advert, bottom left-hand corner, in a Monday edition of the Sun. And Chris, we got 100 inquiries. We could not cope. There was only 4 of us in the office, and we could not cope. The phones were off the hook, and we thought, we've got something here. And then, we obviously repeated the exercise, converted the loans, and that was really the start of the big figures. One of the adverts, and it's, again, you said, celebrity at the beginning. I wouldn't say that. I think a lot of people say legend. I call it legend. And what we did was we had an advert, and Nick and I, my business partner, we dressed up as Spock and Kirk, and we put the advert in, and we said, it's a loan, Jim, but not as we know it. And one said, nothing to repay for 3 months. And obviously you borrowed the loan, and the interest rolled up for 3 months. And it was so tacky. And when you look at the adverts now, you cannot believe that people actually in their droves phoned up. And the other one, the best phrase, is always quite well known, is that in one of the ads we put, we've got one for the money, two for the rate, nothing to pay till June 98. And it really
caught people's attention.
And it was crazy when I look back, but that was like Express Dow for a loan. And then, like I say, 2002, you were getting up to when we sold the company.
So you did all this advertising. It sounds like you were very creative.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if you were growing a business today and you started a new business, you would probably adopt the likes of social media and Google quite effectively, because you would understand what makes people tick, really.
Yeah.
So we got to 2002 then, and you sold the business. And then what happened after 2002? What did you do then, John?
Well, one of the things that happens, Chris, and having been involved now in 2 acquisitions, Cattle's Welcome Finance bought us. And although at first they said, look, we love this operation, it's great and a great feel, it's funny how people who complete acquisitions think they can do it better. Right, and they came into our offices, and they, after about 6-7 months, saw that they wanted to make changes. Well, I'd been a sort of what you can call an entrepreneur, and I'm not used to board meetings and things like that. They came along saying, we want to change your bonus system and we want to change your advertising system. And I said, well, if you do those, the profit will drop dramatically. And a couple of months later, they came back and said, look, well, we want to make these changes. And I said, well, if you made the changes, I'm off, I'm going. Because I could see that was a recipe to disaster, because we had a really happy staff. I've had one of my members of staff, Chris, and on LinkedIn a few months ago, she said, John, you didn't just create a business, you created a family. And that's how we felt with the business. And when they came in wanting to alter people's salaries, working conditions, I thought, I'm having nothing to do with this. And I packed my desk on a Thursday, cried. I was that upset because we'd built an unbelievable business, and I left. But I left, and believe it or not, 18 months, 2 years later, the business folded.
Really?
Yes, which was, but you could see from the way, staff met me afterwards and they could see the way things were going. But one of the things to remember from this is I kept in touch with all my contacts. And one of the things, you get into this business and it's not as though you get in doing a loan or a mortgage, but you're doing it for that client. You want to satisfy their needs and do the job for the client. So once I'd left, although we'd sold the business and really I didn't have to work again, I still love what I do. So I kept in touch with all my contacts, looking eventually for that day when I can get back in the industry, because I didn't want to be out of it too long.
And that's it. You were at a point where you'd sold that business. You didn't really have to work again. So here's the question, crazily, why did you start something up in 2013 again? You could have played golf.
But the thing was, Chris, that's what I thought. I thought, I'm going to play so much golf. I got worse. And, I really did. It wasn't as though, my golf improved dramatically. And you can only play so much. So I kept in touch with everyone. Great mentor of mine and my business partner, Andy Pelly, and John Sims, and people that we know was David Johnson at Shawbrook, and other banks along the way. And they kept in touch with it, and they kept on at Andy and myself and said, look, you've got to get back in the industry. And I never forget, I went to a meeting with Andy 2013, 3 weeks before David died, David Johnson, and he said, look, you two, come on, get back in. And I had a phone call with Andy shortly afterwards, and we met twice at the Belfry in Birmingham, and we formed the loan partnership. And again, we thought, right, 2013, we know what works. Let's put a quarter page in the Sun. We put up $7,500 again. Off we go.
Still the same price.
Still the same price, roughly. We put an advert in, and we got one inquiry. The world had changed. The internet. had completely taken hold. And obviously that's where Google and your leads were all coming from. So the world of direct advertising in the press had completely gone. It was quite a different world. So Andy and I thought, right, we're not going to go that route, and we went B2B because obviously we had a lot of contacts in the business, and we gradually built up our network of people that would use us. And then obviously we got into the networks, and one or two of the mortgage networks with Primus, Stonebridge, and others, Paradigm, Sense, HLP, and that's where we get a lot of our business nowadays.
And that's it. When it's interesting to say about the advertising the Sun, thinking, yep, we just do exactly the same as we did 20 years ago, and it didn't work. Now, I think as business owners, sometimes it's hard to admit defeat in that sense, isn't it? And we don't have to talk about advertising in the Sun, but say if all of our leads came from one particular source, we'd keep hammering that source and think it's got to come good, it's got to come good. Whereas you were like, no, that's gone. Let's shift. Let's completely shift our approach.
Yeah, dangerous that, Chris. You've got to have more eggs in the basket. And have your business coming in from different sources, and that's why we needed different areas, different networks. We still got a bit of direct business, we still do, but never really put all your eggs in one basket, and then if that goes and they fall out with you, boom, you're gone.
That's it. Yeah. So now you've got the loan partnership, so you're going into the likes of networks, you're building the team. You're now the head of that company. You stayed on, say?
I wouldn't say I'm the head now. I think we've got Sarah Gaffney and Joe DeFrace, our managing director, and Sarah. They really run it on a day-to-day basis with the team there. We've got 32 staff down in Hemel Hempstead. I would say I love, like you said at the beginning, you said about the stands and things. I love doing the shows, meeting people. And like the last few weeks, doing a few presentations, telling my story. And I still just love getting involved with people. And nothing pleases me more than getting a deal. Honestly, have deal will travel. I'll go anywhere still, even at my ripe old age of 21. No, sorry. At my ripe old age, I'll still go anywhere to get a deal. And I just, I love people dealing with us. I wouldn't still be doing this, Chris, if we didn't have a team behind us that I can rely on and know that provide the service all over, and people who use us come back time and time again because we provide that service. I once went for a network interview, and I'll never forget the gentleman, I won't mention his name, he said to me, "What are your 3 USPs?" And I just said, service, service, and service. You're only as good as your last deal. And that's what we try to be. And if your service is up to it, people will keep coming back to you. And that's hopefully what happens. The day that stops, Chris, I'm off.
He's done. Yeah. I've got one really important question for you in a moment that I really want to ask, and I think it's going to give the listeners a lot of insight. But before we do, we'd like to make a donation to a charity of your choice as a thank you for coming on the podcast. Which charity did you want us to make the donation to for you?
The more I hear, Chris, at my age and that, it affects us all. So it's obviously got to be cancer research.
Cancer research, we'll make that.
That'd be great. But, it's now, seconds are a credible industry, completely different. Always remember, I always say that once one door closes, another opens. My door closed with teaching, another one opened. I went into the finance industry, and I really do. I've met so many talented people in our industry that just need that push to start their own business or whatever. Have confidence in your own ability, and really just take that plunge. And if you're good enough, you'll do it. Don't worry, and you work hard as well.
And like John says, there's so many talented people out there. And what I love about the finance communities, everybody's willing to help each other. So if you are thinking about taking that leap of going self-employed, starting your own business, there's so many people that have done it that would be willing to give you help. And that leads me perfectly into my final question, John. If you were to go back right to the beginning again, is there anything that you would do differently?
Oh, Chris, good question. Not really. I think the one thing is you've got to always have confidence in your ability. Never burn your bridges. I mean,
Nice.
that's one of so important. How many people who perhaps are listening to this have had a deal turned down and they've said, "That's it. I'm never giving them another deal. That's it. They're rubbish. They're hopeless." And then 3 weeks later, you get a deal on your desk, and who does it fit? That's the only lender it fits. So never ever burn your bridges. And another little gem that I always, like, if you go to events, 95% of the event might be hopeless, but you might just pick up that 5% of information that will help you along the way. So always attend events. You never know what you can pick up. And I would say no regrets, Chris. I've enjoyed it. And more than anything, I still enjoy it.
Love it. Well, we'll have you on the podcast again, most definitely, John. We'll go into some depth into certain areas,
Yeah.
but that was an incredible story from being a primary school teacher all the way through to setting up another company now that is still very successful. And obviously, I've spoken to Joe. I've not spoken to Sarah, but spoken to Joe several times. Lovely guy. Can see that the loan partnership is obviously set up on those family values again, and you can see the amount of brokers I speak to that work in partnership with you guys. It just shows what kind of company has been built there. So testament to yourself and all the team. But John, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate your time, taking it out your schedule. And I'm sure we'll have you on again in the near future.
Cheers, Chris. Enjoyed it. It's good, nice.
Thank
Good fun.
you.
Thank you.
Cheers.